Hello, we are back. Everybody get excited for the Zelda 2 reverse boss order. That's actually surprisingly hard to say. This will be ran by an Enchantress of Numbers and is joined by Magmac Attack. So say hello to them. Also, real quick, one more reminder that we are not having the Super Mario RPG randomizer development showcase this evening. It seems that Paige has got the flu, so unfortunately we will not be seeing that tonight. However, it will be featured once again at the next Frame Fatale event. So get excited for that. Let's get started with the run. How's it going?
All right, so yeah, this is Zelda 2. Time is going to start with Control of Link, which is about 3 seconds after I press start on the menu here. And yeah, I'm Enchantress of Numbers. Meg, if you want to introduce yourself, let's just get going.
Yeah, I'm Magmac Attack. I also run this game, but not this category, so this will be fun.
So here we go, getting started. The very first thing we're going to do is what we call a healer glitch, and I'll let Meg explain that while I concentrate.
Yeah, so healer glitch is an amazing glitch that just completely and utterly breaks the game. Basically, if you do 2 frame perfect inputs when you get to this healer in this town, making her turn around and walk towards the door, and then get her to turn around right as she gets to the door, she will turn around and make a door out of nothing and walk into it. At that point, you can walk into the door and go to what we call Glitch Town. And Glitch Town is where we break the game. Glitch Town allows us to wrong warp. It allows us to completely change the structure of some of the areas in the game, such that, and there we go. We're in Glitch Town now. It looks a lot like one of the other towns, and we're going to use it to wrong warp over to King's Tomb right now. This allows us to bypass getting the hammer, so that we can go and get the hammer much, much faster than we would if we went the front way through.
Yeah, it saves like 6 minutes at least, so...
Yep. And the hammer is pretty much required for every category that finishes the game. There might be like one category you don't need to get the hammer for, I'm not sure.
Well, there's a New Game Plus category you can skip the hammer, but...
Yeah. Yeah, the hammer is an essential item for beating the game. You need it to get various things on the overworld and get around the overworld more easily. And getting it fast through Glitch Town is extremely helpful to beating the game much faster. So we are going to beat the game in reverse boss order in about 20 minutes less or more than the 100% run, the unglitched 100% run. So, yeah, this is the backwards way to the Hammer Cave.
It's worth noting this is like one of the hardest parts of the run, although they're all the hardest part, let's be real.
Yes, this is a very hard run. There are not a lot of people who actually are brave enough to even try to run this category. It's extremely hard. You have to fight some bosses with very little resources, and in this game, resources matter a lot. The thing that Eon just did there, going in and exiting this cave, caused a despawn of one of the enemies in the cave, the very beginning of it.
I'm probably going to die on this next screen.
Yeah, that's a bad life situation for sure.
That's okay.
Yeah. It doesn't really matter here because we're going to up A when we get the hammer, and that basically acts like a game over and sends us up to the North Palace, and lets us get all of our lives back. And yeah, this is an extremely hard part of the game. It's very similar to every other glitch category of the game at this point, but it is extremely difficult. You have attack 1 and you're fighting enemies that the game doesn't really expect you to fight until you have probably attack 3 or 4 at least.
Yeah.
And the attack makes all the difference in this game. It's a huge, huge difference to how quickly you can kill enemies. And obviously we are doing this part in the dark. In 100% all keys, the main category of this game, you would have the candle, and none of this would be dark, and you would be able to see the enemies more clearly. When we run in the dark in this game, which is pretty common in most other categories, you can actually see the feet of some of the enemies on the ground. It's a little bit hard to see on stream probably, but you can kind of see their feet moving along the ground. And other enemies you can just straight up see. So there we go. We have the hammer.
Yeah, and so it's worth noting that this category is routed basically like a low percent run. Normally you would have a lot of stuff going into this cave that we're about to go to, and right now we just have the hammer.
Yeah. Yeah, we're about to go get the water of life from this cave. That lets us get the fairy spell. Another spell that is extremely important to this nearly every category of this game, if not every category.
Yeah.
It's and this water of life is actually the potion from Zelda 1. It's the same thing as that. Although Link does not use it, we are actually going to bring it to a woman to give to her kid, and she will heal her child and let us get in to talk to an old man who will teach us how to turn into a fairy.
Yeah, and the fairy spell is one of 3 spells we'll get the entire run, so...
Yes. We actually get very few spells in this now, and Eon actually has been critical in reducing like how much stuff you get in this category. People used to get more. The any key at least, I think, another
which
spell
required
too.
the spell both. So
yeah,
and cutting those out allowed me to cut basically almost 4 minutes off the world record.
Yeah, and Eon is in fact the world record holder for this category by 4 minutes against the person who holds the records for nearly every category in the game, Simple Dude. It's very impressive whenever anyone other than Simple Dude has a record in this game because he guards them quite jealously, but very nicely. He's a really nice guy.
Yeah,
we just did another healer glitch.
Now we're gonna overflow a door stack.
Yes, so what we're doing here is the game represents when you go into a door, it keeps a stack of which doors you went through and where to go back to from them if you leave the room that you're in. But we keep going into doors, and there aren't that many. There are no places where you go through more than 2 doors at a time in Zelda 2. So the door stack gets overflowed, and then all sorts of memory gets spewed all over with 1s and 0s, and it just messes up a whole bunch of stuff. The big thing that it's going to mess up here is all of these encounters that are supposed to be 5 screens long are going to basically be 1 screen long if you go left. And it completely changes rooms in this palace in a very similar way, and it allows us to wrong warp through the palace. You'll see Eon just like bumping through these rooms one at a time without scrolling anything. This is because of the healer glitch that we did.
So we're getting the glove just like everyone remembers getting.
Yes, this is definitely how the game was intended to be played. Doing this unglitch takes at least a few minutes, but we just did it in less than a minute, basically going through this palace. And then we're going to leave the palace from the middle of it, just go.
So now that we have the glove, we can make our way through the rest. We're going to get the fairy spell, and then we'll find our way to the eastern continent. So,
yep, and we're going to find the way to the eastern continent in a very interesting and not at all unusual way. It's definitely going to be exactly as you expect.
Yes. So,
as you can see, the towns are also screwed up. Eon is going left twice. That puts Eon on the left end of the town, so that she can actually go through it left to right, which is not how you ever go through a town normally in Zelda 2. Generally go right to left.
Yeah, and it's important we actually need to get the fairy spell before we can get the downstab, both of which are required for this category. But since we didn't get the jump spell, we'll see you can actually enter a door as the fairy, and that's actually required to get the downstab now.
Yeah, because we did not get jump, which is how you normally get into the downstab room. And that is actually a minor glitch itself. If you are holding down when you turn into a fairy, the game, for some reason, keeps remembering you as if you were able to interact with doors, which isn't normally true. Normally, as the fairy, you're not able to go up into a door or anything like that. So that is a glitch that's actually used in the all keys category that is not supposed to be glitched, but it's a very, very minor one.
Yeah, I'd question if it's even actually a glitch, just retaining state.
There are always debates in Zelda 2 about whether or not things are glitches.
Yeah,
it's a common thing. If anybody comes and plays Zelda 2, you'll eventually get into an argument about whether or not something is a glitch. So yeah, we are now going to go back to Death Mountain, and we're going to go through the front door of Death Mountain this time. Which, by the way, the other end of the caves that we're going to go through to get to Death Mountain, below that is actually the Zelda 1 map, in a very small format. The area under there is actually laid out exactly like the Zelda 1 overworld map. And as you can see,
blew my mind when I just learned that.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. As you can see, we're just blowing through these rooms that like are so hard. This is usually where people give up playing this game, is going through Death Mountain, and we just like what I call scroll right, exit left through all of these rooms, and just go straight through it. And now we're gonna go into this cave and get a magic jar, and then
do a fairy feet glitch.
Oh yeah,
and we got it.
We are going to be in the maze, which is clear across the world. It's on the other side of the world. This happens because the map data for Death Mountain and the maze share a bank in memory, and they are in the same part. And when you wrong warp out of there, it actually sends you to the maze on the clear other side of the game. And now we're in Palace 4, where we're going to pick up a couple more items.
Yeah, so we're gonna go first thing and get the boots so we can walk on the water, because that's required to get to Palace 5.
And is not a glitch, even if it looks like one.
Queue up fairy. And actually, I'm gonna plan a death abuse right after I pick up the boots, so I will take a death there, but that's intentional.
Yeah. So you may notice a lot of the screens on the palace are glitchy looking and weird looking. I personally think the game looks a little better glitched. Everything looks a little ruined, and there's like these slants of light coming into the rooms. I think it looks really beautiful, and I actually think it looks better this way. If they had made the game actually look like this, I think it would have been a slight improvement over how it looks.
Yeah, so now we're back at the entrance to Palace 4, right?
What? No, this isn't Palace 4. This is Palace 3.
Yeah, so, but because we never actually exited Palace 4, the color palette and image bank or tile sets are still loaded for Palace 4, so.
Yeah, the interesting thing about that is the wrong warping that we're doing in the palaces happens because we're confusing the game into thinking that we're going up or down out of an up or down exit, which most of these rooms do not have initialized. They have their exit going up or down set to 0, which happens to be, because of how the memory is laid out from Palace 4, that is the entrance room of Palace 3. And that means that we go back basically into Palace 3, but with Palace 4's palette. We're technically, as far as the game is concerned, still in Palace 4, but we're actually navigating the space of Palace 3.
Which means we can now get the raft, which would not strictly be necessary. However, it makes things faster to get it, so.
Yeah, I mean, just look at that sunbeam coming down in through a crack of this dilapidated old building. Isn't that just looks great? And yeah, so none of this makes sense in terms of the order that you're supposed to go through this game. We are in a very bizarre spot in so many different ways, and that's honestly what I love most about this run and the other glitched runs of Zelda 2. This is a very linear game, like by nature. The actual game itself is designed to be quite linear compared to other Zelda games of the era. Of the first 3, it is 4, I think. It is probably the most linear of the Zelda games. But when we break the game, we just get to do it in these bizarre orders or just not doing very much of it at all. The any percent run of this game is actually only 20 minutes long, even though the no glitch any percent is over an hour. Or no, a little under an hour, I think. And we just picked up a kid as a fairy,
Yes,
which makes perfect
sense. Like you
sense.
do.
Yeah.
And remember that, because we'll need that later. But
Yep.
not for a lot later. So, also got
Yes.
the magic container. We need to collect all the magic containers because that's a requirement to obtain the thunder spell, and since my magic level won't go above 3 on this entire run, it's also required to be able to cast the thunder spell.
Yes. That's actually, this game has a reputation for being obtuse in terms of its hints and all of that. The game is actually not as bad as people think if you actually go and talk to people in the towns and give some credit to the fact that there were technical limitations to the translation. But I think that one of the things that I actually agree with people is obtuse is needing to get all of the magic jars, and some of them being hidden in really obnoxious places, and the game doesn't ever really tell you that you need them all. But you do actually need to get all of the magic containers in order to beat this game, and specifically to beat Thunderbird, the second last boss of the game.
Okay. That magic level is required to be able to cast fairy again. So that's a well-timed magic level.
Yeah, a lot of Zelda 2 runs in general is timing when you get levels and what levels you get when and what order you get them in. There's a lot of mechanics around that. It tends to be a stumbling block for new runners, knowing when to level and accidentally taking levels that they shouldn't, because you never want to have your levels be too high. That's actually a serious, important thing about this game.
Yeah, I actually pretty rigorously routed the levels in this run, so...
Yes, Eon has done a lot of work on this category. It's pretty much unrecognizable from what it was like a year ago, in a lot of ways. And a year ago, it was pretty much unrecognizable from how it was a year before that. It's changed a huge amount just recently. And some of these glitches are really new, too. It took a long time for people to really break through the game this much. Sometimes people say this game is broken or badly programmed, but given that it took like 30 years for people to find a way to healer glitch, I think it's actually pretty impressively well programmed.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's really cool that we can do all this stuff, and it's really neat how it works. And I don't know, I don't like phrasing it as it being broken or poorly programmed, just because I think it's actually really cool that you can even do this.
Yeah, and we just did another wrong warp. Eon just casually warping twice around the map again. Anybody who's familiar with the overworld knows that we just jumped twice clear across the eastern continent. And we are now in the hidden town, and we are going to... What are you getting a jar here, right? Yeah,
a magic jar. That's all we need to come in here for.
Yes. It used to be that you would go further into the town, you get spell, and it's actually really hard to get spell glitched. It's actually
wrong warp to Old Kasuto to do that.
Yeah, and you can't see the enemies in the other town, and they wreck you at this life level. They just completely wreck you. So it's actually a huge improvement on the category to not have to go there.
And so now as I'm getting the last couple of things before going into Great Palace, I'm also going to grind up to attack level 5. Oh,
Yeah.
What am I doing? Okay.
So yeah, this is some of the glitch categories have periods where you do a little grinding. Weirdly enough, the main category, All Keys, has basically no grind period at all, which is kind of weird for a game with levels and our RPG style stuff. Also, by the way, I've seen a couple comments about whether error is a glitch, the character error, and actually the character of error is often this story goes around that error is like an accident, that they just didn't put text in for his name, but actually there is a joke around error in the game. There's the other character who's often name cited in this game, Bagu. His Japanese name is Bug, and the developers were actually naming the two characters Error and Bug on purpose, and it's a joke. It was not an accident. It's actually entirely on purpose. And Bagu was just a weird translation error, basically.
Yeah.
And a lot of the translations in this game are like, another thing is this game gets a bad rap for its translation, but actually it would have been people think that they were lazy about how they translated it. Or like they were bad translators, but actually a lot of these early games, the reason the translations were bad is because of technical limitations on the amount of text they had, room for text that they had, because they had in Japanese text you can fit a lot more information in a lot fewer characters. Even if you're using their phonetic alphabet, it's just way more dense, and so they only give 10 characters per line, 4 lines of text. And try fitting meaningful content in that space, because that's what the American translators had to do when they translated this game. They had to fit the meaningful information in 4 lines of 10 characters each. They couldn't break words over the lines or anything like that. So they were struggling to come up with ways to do that, I think, in a lot of these. Yes, and Castlevania 2's translation is much more of a problem. And has a lot more issues that have nothing to do with technical limitations.
Okay, so we got the Thunder Spell, did a fairy feat across the bridge to make that go faster, and now doing a little bit of grind before we wrong warp to Great Palace.
Yeah, we're literally going to wrong warp to the end of the game, and then almost beat it, and then go back, because we are doing reverse boss order. If this were an any % run, we'd be done by now because we wouldn't have picked so much stuff up, but it would have been a very similar looking run up to this point for the most part. So yeah, and the warps are going to also be really weird here. I believe we go into this cave right up north here, and
Yes.
And then we just basically come out right next to Grand Palace.
Yep, that's exactly what we do. So now that I've gotten everything and grinded along the way, I'm just going to hang out here and take these small encounters to get 2,000 experience for attack 5. And the reason I'm going specifically for the small encounters is these orange Lizalfos are worth 150 XP. The large encounters have red Lizalfos that are a little bit harder to kill. They take more hits and they give less XP. So it's just a bad deal all around.
Yeah. Yeah, and we are going to skip through that wrong warp, one of the hardest parts of the game, another part that tends to like stop people from finishing the game. We are going to skip Valley of Death. Very aptly named. Many people have died in Valley of Death in their runs and their casual games. And it's just amazing to be able to just jump right over it. We don't even touch it. In fact, we touch it more on the way back out, I believe.
Yeah, we'll actually go through Valley of Death in reverse.
Yeah, which no one would ever do normally. Like you would, there's no point. You're done the game by the time you get there. So we're going to go through it backwards. Sort of.
Sort of. There's also wrong warping shenanigans going on there too.
Yes, so. Yeah, we're gonna skip a few caves in there too.
So I haven't been keeping track of my 6 count. This is either, if this is a pea bag, it's 1 kill. If not, it's 2 kills. I need, so yeah, 1 more as long as it's not a drop.
Will it be a drop?
Well, it's a drop, but we got the pea bag, so
Nice.
we got all pea bags on that grind. I've never had that happen before.
Yeah, that's really lucky. Whenever you kill a big enemy, it increments a counter, and that counter, when it reaches 6, the next enemy will drop either a jar or a pea bag. And it's a 50-50 chance, more or less.
Chat's calling me out. They saw a red jar, which I remember that now that they say that, but that's still more pea bags than I think I've gotten in a run. I seem to get a lot of red jars.
Yeah. All right, and now we are going through Grand Palace. Sadly, well, yeah. So there's a couple of different ways that you can glitch the rooms like this. There's different patterns when you're going into Glitch Town of going through the doors that produce different results, slightly different results. And for this category, we do the pattern that unfortunately makes the enemies actually spawn in front of you. The pattern that you use in any percent, where you don't do nearly as much actually moving through palaces, actually makes the enemies spawn behind you, so actually makes Grand Palace quite a bit easier. Unfortunately, in this category, Grand Palace ends up still being quite a bit harder than the rest of the game. So this is... Oh, yeah, that bot hit. Bots are the true final boss of this game. They have completely random movement. They're one of the few things in this game that is actually straight up RNG that will screw you.
At life 3, enemies hit real hard in the Great Palace.
Yes, at life 3, it's really, really dangerous to get hit by literally anything in here. And you may think that it's heresy to not go back for that pea bag, but we don't need it.
Jump down, please.
And
Okay.
yeah, now we wait for bots to do good things and not bad things, and oh, that was a very cooperative bot. So the thing that Eon's about to do here, casting Thunder in here to make this this Bird Knight go back, is actually a thing that I think Eon innovated herself.
Yeah.
The normal strategy for that room is to basically just YOLO run through it and jump with the jump spell on the other side of it. We don't have jump, so we can't do that. So it's very difficult to get through that room. But if you cast Thunder while the Bird Knight is jumping towards you, it knocks him back a really far distance, maybe far enough that he freezes because he's out of range.
That was a poorly timed jump, but at least I was going to have to take a Death Abuse anyway to refill magic, so just got it out of the way early.
Yep. And that is definitely a thing in the glitch categories in Grand Palace, is that there's a point after which dying is okay, because that's where you want to do a refill anyways with a... Sorry, I'm anxious about that Bird Knight right there. that was scary. Yeah, there's a point after which you want to Death Abuse anyways, because any use of magic at these low magic levels basically makes it so you can't cast Thunder or cast the spells you need to skip Thunderbird, which is what you do in any percent. Both of those things take a lot of magic.
So I can't skip Thunderbird.
Yes, that's true. We can't actually skip Thunderbird. In any percent, you skip Thunderbird by using jump and ferrying in the HUD, and it basically lets you jump straight over Thunderbird. But in this category, we're doing reverse boss order, which means we have to fight all the bosses, including Thunderbird, and that means that we have to go do this properly.
That was a pretty swag Mew kill.
That could have gone very badly if you weren't down stabbing there. All right, now this is the scary part. Eon can only get hit twice by Thunderbird.
Second hit kills me.
Second hit kills you, yeah. And has to hit
24
Thunderbird.
hits.
24 hits. Yeah, that's incredibly hard. After Thunderbird's life bar gets down to half, Thunderbird will start throwing double fireballs, and then we're truly into bullet hell at that point.
Bullet heck.
Yes, bullet heck. And yeah, this is where things get really scary.
Okay, got it.
Nice, and that's amazing. It is so. I saw in chat the question if it's possible to fight Dark Link before Thunderbird, and the answer to that is complicated. It is technically probably possible with an absolutely frame-perfect up and A after beating Dark Link.
Wouldn't need to be that frame perfect, but Dark Link is going to respawn there when you go back.
Yeah, you'll have to fight him again if you do that, so it doesn't even really matter. So this category does not fight Dark Link first. We fight Thunderbird first, and then we come back for Dark Link to end the game. And that was an amazing Thunderbird. Eon made it look easier than it is, which is impressive, because it is so hard. Even with fully powered up, Thunderbird is often one of the hardest bosses in this game. And now we're going back to Palace 6, where we are going to fight Barbra, the second last normal boss of the game. Barbra is actually, in the Japanese version, is called Volvagia, which you may recognize from Ocarina of Time. One of the bosses in Ocarina of Time was also named that. They changed the name to Barbra for some reason for the American release.
I think it was just a translation thing because B and V are represented by the same character in Japanese. They don't have distinct syllables for those.
That doesn't explain the shortening, though.
That's true.
But that probably is part of it, I'm sure. But yeah, I think that Ocarina of Time actually borrows a lot from this game and is more inspired by this game than it is by the other, or at least equally inspired by this as it is by the other 2D Zelda games from the NES and Game Boy and SNES. Are you not doing fire strats? No, you don't have fire.
I don't have the fire spell.
Right. Yeah, so this room actually, with the flying unicorn heads going at you, is a really rough room at the best of times. I gotta take a death abuse anyway. Magic's real tight in this room. Even if I did have the fire spell, I wouldn't have the magic to cast it, so... Right, yeah. New runners of the game often go in there and try to go through the whole room in one go, but almost always they die, and it's really funny because even the best runners of the game usually stop and they kill things in that room to make sure that they're safe. So it's funny to see new runners think that they need to just go as fast as they can. Sometimes in speedrunning you actually do want to slow down a little bit. That said, there has been new strats that they let you go through there a lot faster.
Yeah, Lord of Ultima pioneered the fire strats on that, and then I adapted them for the glitched 100% run. Oof.
Oh. And here we are seeing this boss is actually the final boss of one of the other palaces, but here is just a mini boss. Oh wow, that was scary. He's basically the same as any other blue iron knuckle, except he's always in enrage mode, so he's always shooting really fast, and he comes in on a horse. And later we're going to see him come in on something other than a horse, and it's going to be pretty great. But there are a bunch of different strategies for beating that boss, but if you don't know them, it's actually one of the harder enemies in the game to beat. And here we go. This is Barbra. I'm gonna see a very cautious fight against Barbra compared to the non-glitched categories, where you're much more powerful and you have jump and reflect.
And you can manipulate the initial spawn point on the non-glitched categories.
Yes,
because of the way the spawn affects your horizontal position, we can't do that manipulation
Yeah, the manipulation is basically if you run into the room as fast as you can without stopping, and you get to the point where the screen freezes, Barbra will always spawn in the rightmost pit. And this screen looks especially good glitched. It's also really terrifying because a lot of what looks like platform is not at all platform. And you have to know where the platforms are, or you will just jump into lava, and that will be it. And especially at this point in this run, it's really critical that that you have enough lives to keep going. Lives matter a lot in this run because a game over means we have to do healer glitch again at the very least.
Yes.
And we don't have the raft, so that means that we have to wrong warp back over here.
No, we do have the raft.
Oh, we do have the raft, right? Yes.
That was the old route that didn't get the raft.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, because we have the raft, we will actually sail. This is the only category that you ever intentionally sail to the western continent on the raft.
Yeah, and oh yeah, right. Yeah, it used to up A to get back there, basically, right?
Right.
So Eon made short work of what we call the Wilson tiles, so named because there's a bunch of Lizalfos just hanging out on top of that fence.
Behind the fence.
And yeah, and if you're of the right age, you know who Wilson is. If you aren't of the right age, you probably don't know what we're talking about. But it's an old TV show that was pretty crappy. All right, so now we're going into Palace 5, and in here we are going to fight probably one of the hardest bosses in the game again.
In my opinion, the hardest boss.
Yeah, Eon thinks it's the hardest boss. I disagree, but certainly I would agree in this category. This boss is called Guma, not to be confused with Goma, who is a spider boss in other Zelda games. Has a very similar sounding name. Guma is a giant guy who throws a mace around at you and hits you incredibly hard, and was actually invented specifically for the American release of this game. Guma is not in the Japanese release. And this palace really starts to get into the like weird glitchy looks and like screens not looking like what they actually are. As you can see, there's blocks that Eon is breaking that you don't see until Eon even breaks them. That is all because of the scroll lock glitch that we used earlier.
All right, now on to Guma. I'm gonna focus and be quiet.
Yeah, so this fight is really, really hard at the best of times. Eon is going to use a very, well, you might see a casual player use on it because it's much safer. The like speedrun strats is basically just to get in his hitbox and either down stab him on his belly over and over again, or just stab him and jump in time with his mace. This strategy is incredibly safe by comparison, and if you're playing this game casually for the first time, that's what you should try to do to fight this boss for your first time. You should go in, stab him, run away. Go in, stab him, run away. And it makes him considerably easier if you just do that.
All right, we're going to finally get a 1-up. And you remember that child that we picked up from the cave as a fairy? We still have that child. We need to go return that. So. Yep.
And Eon is actually doing something from the 100% all keys category, doing encounter skips here, or
and the dazzle
encounter
walk.
avoidance. The dazzle walk, yes. Which getting across there without getting an encounter. And we jump at that cloud. Me and Eon have taken to calling that. Well, I've taken to calling that the Miyamoto cloud because I take it as proof that Miyamoto intended the glitched run by putting that helpful cloud there to tell you where to jump on those screens. It's not even just that screen. There's other screens that have a cloud in exactly the right spot that you need to jump, and it's really great. But yeah, we just returned that kid that was being held hostage by Lizalfos earlier. Fun fact: in the Japanese game, you actually stab the kid when you pick it up.
No, you cut the bindings off. The kid is clearly tied up.
This is an old argument. It sure looks to me like you're stabbing the kid. You can even downstab the kid, and I don't know how that's breaking the bonds if you downstab the kid.
Lore.
Also, this is going to be one, or no, you don't get upstab, do you?
No.
Yeah, you don't get upstab in this category. So we are going to do another wrong warp. This one is amazing because it again skips some really annoying encounters, and we just jump to the bottom of this area of the map instead of going through the encounter and getting.
Which lets
to
us
the side.
do a standard manipulation from all keys as well. So.
Yep. These manipulations tend to be some of the most important ones in all keys. Because if you get one encounter in that area, you get a whole bunch, and it slows you down a lot. So upstab is the opposite of downstab. So when Eon holds down while stabbing, we just took a dive in the lava there. That makes Link aim his sword down onto an enemy. And upstab is just doing the opposite of that. It makes you stab upwards, and you learn both of those skills from a knight in one of the towns. A downstab is incredibly important, and upstab is technically important, but there are ways to avoid needing it even in all keys, though you have to get it in all keys because it's 100% category. And we are now going to fight the most exciting, hardest boss in the game. It's incredibly difficult. You have to sit in this corner for as long as you can while holding down.
The first hit is free. The first hit's guaranteed.
The first hit is free, yes, that's true.
Oh, I should also point out that we only placed one gem, the one in Palace 6, and that's the only gem we're actually going to place the entire run. So.
Yep. In most categories that go through most of the game, you actually place all of the gems. You place a lot of gems because even if you didn't have to, just because you get a lot of XP out of them. That's basically what all keys is built on, is manipulating the gems so that you get as much XP as possible out of each of them, and you get levels a lot earlier than you're supposed to. But in this category, we only get one. And part of the reason for that is because we don't need to, fundamentally.
It's actually slower because we don't need the experience, and also, since I didn't get the magic key, I actually want those boss keys to save me on magic later.
Yeah. So now you're not getting the gem, you get a key. You don't go right, and that means that we don't have to open the door to the gem spot. The other thing is that 3 of the palaces, we can't actually place the gems because of the glitch. Technically, we can place them, but you have to actually leave the palace and come back in. For some reason, in 3 of the palaces, it will not let you place the gem. If you beat the boss and go into the gem room, you just can't. You walk over the spot the gem is supposed to get placed, and nothing happens. And so you have to leave, and you have to come back in, and you have to go back through the entire palace again in order to just place the gem. And we actually do that in 100%, the glitched 100% category, because we do need the XP there.
And you need to place the gems.
And you need to place, that's right. You need to place the gems, even though it reduces something from your inventory.
Get your Rebo Shark emotes ready.
Yeah. So, this beautiful glitch where Rebo comes in on what appears to be a shark instead of a horse is actually because the game thinks that we're in Palace 4 right now, and that shark is actually made of the segments of the sprite of the Palace 4 boss. And yes, we call that Rebo Shark. Rebo Shark is the mascot of the long-form glitched runs of this game. Runs would be invalid if you didn't get the Rebo Shark, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and also worth noting here with the long walk here and taking the raft to the left, we'll get to hear a lot more of this overworld music than you normally get to.
Yeah, so we just went across the ocean the wrong way. In most cases, you'll go the other way, or not even touch the raft at all. Yeah, we just bend the world completely in this category. It's amazing.
Oh, dang it. I thought I was going to make it. So not the best encounter luck there, but in the swamp, there's not a lot you can do about it.
Yeah, swamps are really bad for encounters. Even there's really nothing you can do to completely control it except have a perfect pattern that you're going to move through it that will always avoid them, which requires basically that you do it from start. You have to
Yeah, because the RNG is all frame-based, so at this point I have no idea what the encounters are going to do.
Yeah, so the only way to know what the RNG is going to do for the most part in this game is to do an up A. And once you do an up A, it resets the counter from when you open in North Palace. And All Keys, for example, relies on certain patterns happening because you're at the beginning of the game, and in 100%, no major glitches, you get some specific patterns because you up A frequently in that category. But in every other category where you don't up A very much, you're just at the mercy of RNG for the overworld encounters for the most part. And for the most part, the patterns that we've developed for not being at the mercy of the RNG are patterns that just avoid it avoid the encounter, what the encounters do.
So, yeah, and now we're coming up on Helmet Head.
Or Voldemort.
Or Voldemort, yeah, although we won't really get to see why we call him Voldemort in this because my attack level's so high.
Yes, we're just gonna... From this point on, we're basically just plowing through the enemies. You are not supposed to be attack 6 at this point in the game. Oh wow, you got hit after killing him. That was...
Yeah.
I hadn't seen that before.
Yeah, I got hit by the helmet on the ground because I wasn't paying attention and forgot which side I needed to stand on.
Yeah, so that's Voldemort. We're about to go fight Horsehead. We actually once again wrong warped through the palace. The room 0 for this for Palace 2 is Palace 1's entrance, and that's why we were able to just wrong warp again using the up and down exits to go to an uninitialized exit, and now we're in Palace 1's map area, even though the game actually thinks that we're still in Palace 2. So we are now going to go fight Horsehead in Palace 2. An interesting thing about doing all of these things is that Palace 1 is actually usually kind of immune to being done glitched. In the 100% category, we worked really hard to try to get as much glitched as possible. And Palace 1 was just never worth it because in 100% you have to get the heart container near Palace 1, and also you have to get the candle, and it is impossible to get the candle in this palace glitched. If you try to go into the room before the candle, you will just fall into lava forever because of how the game is... Because of how the room is laid out and how the glitch interacts with the room layout. You just immediately fall into the lava the moment you go into the room. You die, you respawn, fall into the lava, go in, and until your game over, and then you're dead.
So now we've taken care of all the bosses, and so all that's left to do is go take out Dark Link and get the Triforce and wake Princess Zelda.
Yep, so we're going to wrong warp back over. I actually don't remember how... I don't run this category. I run a bunch of other glitch categories, but I don't actually run this category. So where are we wrong warping from? We're going to do
We're going to go down by New Kasuto and then straight to the front door of Great Palace. So it's 6 seconds faster to go this way.
Right. So yeah, we're once again going to skip all of Valley of Death. And then we're going to go do Grand Palace again. And finish the game, finally.
Right, so now, for the second time, we're in Great Palace. But this time, no one will be there when we go through Thunderbird's room.
And yes, like Cloudy Shoe said in chat, the palaces that are connected are basically 1, 2, and 5 are all in the same memory area and share same room 0 in the data. And likewise, 3, 4, and 6 are also all connected because they all share a room 0 in the same memory region. The Grand Palace is in a memory region all of its own. It's a massive area. We see so little of it in speedruns, but if you've ever actually played this game casually, you've probably tried to get through here, and you have probably struggled a lot with getting through, finding your way through it, because every room looks the same. It's really confusing, and there are a lot of rooms. Even the randomizer for this game has a setting that is often turned on to lower, I think, the number of rooms by 1/3 or something.
Yeah, I forget. It lowers it in a range, so you don't exactly know how many rooms it cuts out.
Yeah.
But
and for a really good reason, because it's just a huge space. But the paths through it, there's a couple of reliable paths through the palace, and there's one in particular that all the speedruns use. I think there's another path that would be used, a different one that would actually be used if there was a low percent category for this game, but there is not a low percent category for this game, unfortunately.
Shoot.
Mostly because no one can agree on what item you would drop what thing you would drop specifically for low percent, because there's a choice, much like Super Metroid.
Jump down, please. Thank you.
So this second time through Grand Palace is going to be a bit easier, just because we don't have to fight Thunderbird, though, and we don't have to do Thunderbird skip even. So magic is not really a huge issue.
I won't take a death abuse intentionally.
Yeah, because we beat Thunderbird. Thunderbird is already dead and stays dead once you beat him and grab his key. And then you can just walk through his run. One of the meanest things that I've ever seen anyone do to someone playing this game is tell them that after they died to Dark Link that Thunderbird wouldn't stay dead. It made that person so angry, and it was a huge lie. And they got to Thunderbird and they were like, "What the hell?"
The relief was really something to see, though.
Yeah. So if you are playing this game casually, this way that Eon does a very different thing in the non-glitched game. It actually takes you to a 1-up. There is a 1-up right before Thunderbird. Very useful. Unfortunately, because of the way 1-ups work in this game, if you get it once, you never get to get it again, even after you game over. So you only get one shot at having that 1-up be useful. It's kind of... I think it's a little bit cruel, honestly, as far as game design things go.
Alright, now here we go. This is... Yeah, unless you game over after Thunderbird, this is the only time you ever walk through Thunderbird's room without having to fight Thunderbird.
Yep. And Thunderbird's room looks incredible glitched, I think. Like, going back to what I was saying, and we get a more incredible... Although Eon cleared away some of the glitchiness at that start.
If I didn't clear it away, I wouldn't be able to see Dark Link at all. So
yeah, that is an issue. Yeah, it would make this fight a lot less visually interesting as well, because you'd just see Link stabbing at nothing and you'd have no idea what was going on. We do corner strats here. Fighting Dark Link is incredibly hard without doing this. And there we go, time.
So, and then the really cool thing now is the game actually stays in this glitched state during the credits too, which is really cool. We'll see the North Palace is glitched out, and that sunbeam to the right stays there the whole time.
Yeah, and the colors cycle with the credits as the credits fade in and out. Some of the colors of the glitches also change, which is really neat looking.
Yeah.
And that's that. That is Zelda 2.
Yes, and so I don't know. I think that's pretty much all I have. Hope y'all enjoyed the run. I hope you're enjoying the Frame Fatales event and enjoy the next runs coming up.
Yeah. This is, in my opinion, this is an amazing game. Super underrated, and I think if you're looking for a hard game, like a challenging game to run, this is an awesome game to run because it feels so good to get good at it. So yeah.
Well, good work on the run. That was awesome and crazy to watch.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was better than a lot of my practice runs went, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Congrats. That's awesome for a marathon. That's super
Yeah.
cool. Well, good work. And next up, everyone, we have a Resident Evil 4 Separate Ways, and I guess that means new game by Mind Controllers coming up next. So make sure you stick around and watch. We have some more awesome runs coming up this evening, and this has been so much fun so far. So stay tuned for more speedruns and some Resident Evil 4.